Good morning, everyone. Yeah, very good morning. Shall we begin the session? Yeah, today's topic is chapter number 5, that is the classes and the objects. So now we are moving to the programming part more. That is, what are the classes, what are the objects, how we can use them, or what are the various objects by which we can initialize, by which we can get the object classes done. So let's start with the classes and the objects. Yeah, first key concept is using the structure, then create a class, how to create a class, then defining a member functions, creating the objects, using the objects, how we can use the create the object that is made, introduction of this topic. Let's start with the introduction of the topic. That is the most important feature of the C++ is the classes. Whatever the class we are using now, that may be an on-screen class, that may be an off-screen class. That significance will be used in the high modality rate. That is, we can use the step initially that is given, that is a C with the classes with the new language, and it is extension of the idea of the structure that is used in C. It is a new way of creating and improving the user-defined data types, and in this we are going to discuss the concept of class by first reviewing the traditional structures that is found in C and the ways by which the classes can be designed, implemented, and applied. Then the C structures revise. So there is a structure that is used with the C, that is a C structure that will be available, that will be used, that will be done, so that we can access the results, we can access the value with the C structures. So in this we have declared a structure that is a struct student that contains a four variable, three variable, that is the char name 20, int roll number, and the float total marks. How much time you need more? Okay. Next part, that is the structure, that is the struct student. There are four elements in this: char name 20, int roll number, float total marks. And the keyword struct defines the or declare the student as a new data type that will be declared, that will be initialized, that can hold the three fields of the different data type. These fields are known as the structure member or the elements. So the identifier student, which is referred as a student name or the structure tag, that can be used to create the variables of student type. So if I want to declare the variable, so we can use the struct student A, and A is a variable of the type student and has three member variable that is defined by the template. Member variable can be accessed using the dot operator or the period operator. Either we can say the dot operator, either we can say the period operator, that is as follows. So this is the strcpy a dot name zone, then a dot row number 999, then total marks is 595.5, then the final total is a dot total marks, that is a plus 5. Now, what are the various limitations of C structure? Why the C++ classes are in use? So, is there any limitation of this one? So, the standard C does not allow the struct type to be treated like the built-in types. For example, consider the following program, consider the following structure that will be used, that will be initialized with the data structure. So there is a struct complex float x float y, and then we are using the variable that is a C1, C2, C3. So there are three variables that have been created, and these C1, C2, C3 can be easily be assigned the values using the dot operator, but we cannot add the two complex number or subtract the one from the another. For example, C3 equals to C1 plus C2, that is illegal because we are declaring the variable, but we cannot perform the operations using the structure variables. Another limitation of C structure is that they cannot permit the data hiding. That is, data is visible to each and everyone. That is not hide to the external users. In other words, the structure members are public members. The next is extension to the structure. So C++ also supports all the features of the structure that is defined in C, but C++ has expanded its capability, that is further to suit its OOP philosophy, that attempts to bring the user-defined types as close as possible to the built-in data types, that can be used to provide a facility to hide the data, which is one of the main principles of the OOPs,
And inheritance is one of the concepts that can be used in the C++ to take the data, to bring the data, inherit the data from one type to another, that is supported by the C++ only. So in C++, structures can have both the variables and the functions and the member. So in this, they can be used as a standalone and can be used like any other variable, and the struct keyword can be omitted in the declaration of the structure variable. For example, we can declare the student variable A, so student A. So remember, this is an error because we cannot incorporate the extension that is used in the user defined known as the classes. Therefore, there is a little syntactical difference between the structure and the classes in the C++. Therefore, they can be used interchangeably with the minor modifications. And since the class has specially introduced data types in C++, so most of the C++ programmers tend to use the structures also for holding the data, only data, and the classes to hold both the member and the data and the functions. Therefore, we will not discuss the structures anymore further because we are using the structured data type that will be defined as the classes. Yeah, only difference between the structure and the class is that by default the members of a class are private, while the members of a structure are public by default. Then next is specifying a classes. So a class is a way to bind the data and its associated functions together that allows the data and the functions to be hidden if necessary from the external use. And when defining a class, we are creating a new abstract data type so that we can treat it in, like any other data types. So generally, a class specification has two parts: class declaration and the class function definitions. Yes, there are two parts in this: class declaration and the class function definition. So the declaration includes how we can declare the functions or how we can declare the value that will be available. So a declaration describes the type and the scope of its member, and the definition describes how the functions are implemented or what is the processing behind this. So there are two parts. One is a declaration, one is a definition. And the definition is the main part because every processing, every variable declaration that is need to process the data that is available within the class only. So this describes how the class functions are implemented. And the general form of a class declaration is class name, private, variable declaration, function declaration. Then public, variable declaration, function declaration. And this class declaration is very similar to the struct declaration. That is, a keyword class specifies that what follows is an abstract type of or data of the type class name. But the body of a class is enclosed within the braces and terminated by a semicolon. So we are using the semicolon for terminated, we are using the braces for the termination. And the class body contains the declaration of the variables and the functions also. These functions and variables are collectively known as the class members. They are usually grouped under the two sections, namely the private and the public, to denote which of the members are private and which of them are public. So the keywords private and the public are known as the visibility levels. So in case of the public, everyone, that may be external, that may be internal, has a right to share the variables. But in case of private, only the class members has a right to share the variables or any data. The class members that have been declared as a private can be accessed only from within the class. On the other hand, the public members can be accessed from outside the class also. The data hiding, that is using the private declaration, is the key feature of object-oriented programming, and the use of keyword private is also optional. And by default, the members of a class are private, and if both the labels or labels are missing, then by default all the members are private. And such a class is completely hidden from outside world and does not serve any purpose. There is no declaration of any purpose. And whatever the variable that is declared, that will be declared as a process that is inside the class that are known as the data member, and the functions that will be used, that will be declared as a function, and one of the part that will be used as a member functions. And only the member function that will be given, that is very much useful, that is very much attractive to access to the private data members in the private function. So, however, the private members or the public members that can be accessible from outside the class also. As I said, the public member can be accessible either within the class or outside the class. But the private members, yeah, public member can be accessible, but the private member can be accessible only within the class. And when we wrap each and everything, that means when we bind the data and the functions together into a single class type, that is known as the encapsulation. So there is a no entry to the private area. There's a class, so private area, data and the functions, public area, that is entry allowed to the public area also. That means the data hiding in the classes. Now the next simple example of the class, that is a class item, int number, float cost, then public void get data, int a, float b, void put data. So there are two data members, there are two member functions that will be used, that contains, or the data member are of the private type and the member functions are of the public type. And we usually give a class with some meaningful name. For example, we have given the item because the item have a number and the cost. And the class item contains the two parameters, two declarations that will be defined. That is, by default it is given, and data members are private by default while both the functions are public by declaration. And the function get data can be used to assign the value that can be used to the member variable number and the cost, and the put data for displaying their value. And these functions provide the only access to the data members from outside the class. This means that the data cannot be accessed by any function that is not a member of the class item, but the functions are declared, not defined. And the actual function definitions will appear later in the program. These are usually declared as a private and the member functions as a public. So this also shows two different notation that is used by the OOPS analyst to represent a class. Now next is how to create objects. So objects are like a variables of the classes. So whatsoever the classes we are using up, so they have a variable that are known as objects. So they will arrive what they come, they will use what they come. And once a class has been declared, we can create the variable of that type using the class name like any other data types. For example, there is a class item, data, number and the cost. Then the function that will get data and the put data. Get data have different items, and the put data also have a different item. Then the item x that creates a variable x of the item of type item, and in C++, the class variables are also known as the object. Therefore, x's are also known as the object of the type item. And we may also declare the more than one object in one statement. Example, item xyz. This declaration will be used as an object that is very similar to that of the variable of any basic data type. And the memory space, or the necessary memory space, is allocated to an object at this stage. That is used as a specification
like a structure that provides only a template and does not create any memory space for the objects. Objects can be created with definitely the data that can be used as a variable by defining their names immediately with the data after the curly braces or closing braces. That is to say, the definition it will be used to create the objects XYZ of the type item. And this practice is seldom followed because we would like to declare the object close to the place where they are used and not at the time they are placed down, not at the time they are getting out of the class definition. So they are going to declare the object, they are going to declare the variable that can be close to the place where that can be used. Next, how to access the class member that can be accessed through the member functions of that variable only. That can be used to take the number and the argument that will be used. Yes, whatsoever the number they have used up, whatsoever the data they have used up, so they are declaring that data, they are declaring that variable also that can be used to access that data. No. That is a variable, I agree, but that can be used, that cannot be used as a data member, that can be used as a member variables. Now the next example is the function call statement that will be used. So there is a x dot get data 100 and the 75.5. 100 is an integer because we have given the integer argument, and 75.5 is a decimal. So we have given the float argument, float data type. That will be assigned the value of the 100 to the number and the cost of the object x is at 75.5. Similarly, the statement that will be given, that is the x dot put data, that will display the values of the each data members. And remember that the function or the member function can be invoked only by using that object that is of the same class. The statement like get data 175.5 that will be used has no meaning. Similarly, the statement that will be given that can be accessible, that is the x dot number is 100, that is also illegal because we have declared the variable and that object will be given with the number below. Now how to manage that, how to access by the object directly. So there is a class xyz int x int y public int z. Public members will be used or will be given as an int z. So there are two variables, that is private by default x and the y, and the public member that is a z. And we have declared one object that is a p. So we are using the p dot x, that is 0. That is not possible because x is a private and z is public. So we can access that by using the p dot z. So it is only showing that private members cannot be accessed with the objects also of the class, and the public members can be accessed with the objects. Right. Next topic is defining the member function that I'm going to take within the next class, that is in the tomorrow's class. Yeah, tomorrow is Friday. So if there is any doubts, any clarification regarding this, anything that you want to ask regarding the assignment, then please, yeah, ask over the phone, over email.